Hi everyone, welcome to Doc Explain This, the podcast where we break down medical concepts using simple everyday language. I'm your host, Dr. T, and before we dive into today's topic, I just want to say a big thank you for listening, sharing, commenting, and liking our first episode. If you didn't listen, maybe it's your first time, please go back to it when you can. I'm sure there's a word or two there for you. So today we will be discussing a topic that affects millions of people but often gets ignored until it's too late. Drumroll please. I'm talking about high blood pressure or high BP or what doctors call hypertension. Now, because I am all about making things more relatable and easier to understand, I'll be using a very familiar idea to explain. Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's get into it. So, I want you to imagine your body is like a house. More specifically, the water supply of a house. I want you to think about the water supply system of a house. So I want you to think pumps, I want you to think pipes, taps. I want you to think about how those taps then feed into different areas of the house. So I want you to think that your heart is like a water pump, or what people call pumping machine. The pipes of the house will be the blood vessels, so arteries, veins, and they'll keep running through the house. And of course, every room that those pipes supply will now be the different organs of the body, so the heart, the brain, the intestines, all of that. Just think about that and just hold it up for me in one corner. Now, when the water pump or the pumping machine pushes blood through the pipes, you would agree with me that there's a pressure at which it does that. This pressure is the force that helps to move the water into every room of the house. In our case, it will be the force that moves blood into every organ of the body, and this force is what we call blood pressure. Now, when the system works well, what will happen? The pump, which is the heart, will continue to beat steadily. It will continue to push water into every room or every area that needs water steadily. The pipes will be smooth, flexible, no dirt, no clog, nothing inside. And of course, the most important goal, everybody gets water, so every organ gets blood. Simple, right? Does it make sense? Just think about it. Normal blood pressure reading is below 120/80 millimeters of mercury. That's mmHg if you've ever seen it written. And you might be wondering, what are those two numbers? Well, the first number, the 120, represents the systolic blood pressure, which is the pressure in the heart when it's pumping. And the bottom number, the 80, represents the diastolic blood pressure, which is the pressure in the heart when it's resting between beats. So the heart is not a machine like the water pump or the pumping machine that goes on continuously. The heart has to rest in between beats for a couple of seconds. So that's why we have the two different types of readings. And if your readings are consistently higher, so let's say 130/85, or even worse, 140/90, now that's high blood pressure. Now a reading between 120 to 129 for systolic and 80 to 85 for diastolic is elevated blood pressure. But once the reading is 130/85, 140/90, that's high blood pressure. And if it gets higher, it puts more strain on the heart, the blood vessels, and the organs. So when in doubt, and anytime you have to check for your blood pressure, remember that 120/80 is the number to aim for. Now, beyond this, you also have to understand that your blood pressure can vary depending on the time of day, the stress, meals, and activity. So a single high reading doesn't mean that you have hypertension. Consistent readings over time is what matters. So home monitoring is helpful, but always check with a professional for diagnosis. A second opinion is not a bad option. Now I want you to imagine what will happen if some of these pipes get clogged with dirt, or if they start to rust and have build up inside them. So first imagine that these pipes were quite large and water was flowing freely, and then slowly over time you start to see dirt building up on the sides of the pipe. Now what happens is, one, the volume of water that would normally pass has been reduced, because now the dirt and the build up on the sides of the pipe are competing with it, and it's not as if that water can go somewhere else to back up. So what happens is the pump has to work harder, it has to push harder, generating more force than normal to push the water out. And because of that, the pressure increases. You would agree with me. But it's not as if the volume of water coming out has increased. In fact, it has reduced, but the pump has to do twice the work because of the pressure of the other materials, the dirt and the blockages in the pipe. Because of the pressure of those ones in the pipe, it has increased the pressure of the water that normally flows into it. So now that pressure build up is what we call high blood pressure or hypertension. And just like with the plumbing system, it doesn't just affect the amount of water that comes out, so the water that comes out is reduced. It also affects the entire system, because eventually you hear things like the pumping machine got spoiled. It stresses the entire system. Now you might be wondering, what causes high blood pressure in the body? Now here's where things get interesting. So most of the time, high blood pressure doesn't happen overnight. So there are reasons behind it. And to better explain these reasons, I have to explain that there are two types based on cause of high blood pressure. There are two types of high blood pressure. So we have the primary high blood pressure, or what is called essential high blood pressure, and we have the secondary one, and I would explain why they are called that. So the primary one, or the essential one, is usually the type we see in most people, and it's the type that builds up over time, and it's due to a lot of factors. It's not just one thing that actually causes it, and it's often due to a mix of genetics or family history. So it's been in the family, it's something that has happened to different family members, and people carry these genetic traits, so you have no control per se over that. It's also due to aging. So as people get older, the elastic content that makes the blood vessels more flexible is lost with age. So what we have is that the blood vessels become stiff over time. So usually they can expand to accommodate moments of increased pressure and then come back. They have the elastic component, but that is lost with age. So aging, also lifestyle factors, so things like diet, exercise, stress, all of that contributes over time to the development of high blood pressure. So those are the factors that actually cause primary or essential high blood pressure, and all of that together comes together to cause high blood pressure after a while. So it builds up over time. So that's for primary or essential high blood pressure. There's also secondary high blood pressure or hypertension, and those ones are due to a specific cause. So there's a reason, and usually there's a particular disease or condition that has predisposed the person to it. There's nothing wrong per se with the heart on its own or the blood vessels on their own. It's another condition that brought it up. So for example, going back to our concept of the water supply system of a house, there are some homes that have something called a water filter, and an organ in our body that can be likened to that water filter is the kidney. And what they do is they clean up the water supply. In our case, the kidneys clean the blood. They remove all the things that needs to be excreted, and then we have clean blood flow, in quote. So anything that affects the kidneys affects the body's ability to excrete all the things that should be excreted in form of urine, and that leads to a buildup of dirt or clogs in our case. So anything that affects the kidney can cause issues with the blood flow or blood supply system of the body, and that itself can lead to hypertension. It's probably one of the quickest ways people develop sudden hypertension. Usually we have to check the kidneys. Also, the body also has an hormonal network system, and that network system is called the endocrine system. So with the way hormones work, some of them can send signals to different organs of the body that are in charge of the circulatory system, and because of that they can alter things too. So any form of disease that has to do with certain types of hormones, not all of them, certain types, for example thyroid hormones. There's also another hormone called cortisol that is responsible for stress, fight or flight response. All of that, those certain hormones can affect blood pressure and cause hypertension. So there was nothing necessarily wrong with the works, with the system itself, like the heart and the blood vessels. It's these hormones that are causing the issue. Then another secondary cause of hypertension is actually drugs. So drugs that people use, there are certain medications that can cause hypertension, most commonly painkillers, oral contraceptives, steroids can cause hypertension. And there are also tumors, very rarely, that can cause hypertension. Now the secondary causes of hypertension are usually more sudden. So imagine someone now is normal and then suddenly just develops high blood pressure, most often than not. Especially if they are younger, there are other things that must have happened behind the scenes. So we usually investigate for secondary causes of hypertension. But what we see more commonly is the primary type of hypertension, or the primary causes of hypertension, and those ones are the ones we see in people as they grow older, and also because of family history. So people that actually have a family history of hypertension might present earlier than other people, but it's still primary hypertension. So those are the causes of hypertension. Now, what are the consequences of having high blood pressure? Now, is it that bad? Is it as bad as we make it to seem? Yes, it is that bad, because if you remember the concept of the water system that we're dealing with, we spoke about the fact that if the pipes become too narrow because of the things that have built up in it, after a while, what happens is that the pressure will continue to increase. So a patient has high blood pressure, if it's not being managed, it's only going to get worse. It doesn't suddenly get better. 2, with the pipes, I'm sure you can remember that as it gets increasingly narrowed and the pressure continues to increase, there are people whose pipes have actually burst because of too much pressure. And before you think it can only happen with pipes of a building, it happens to human beings too. It happens in our bodies. It's just that you're not familiar with the diagnosis that is usually given. So when you hear things like the person had a hemorrhagic stroke, or the person had a bleed, in quotes, it's because one of those pipes in the body burst because of pressure. Now, in some cases too, imagine if the build-up completely closes off the pipe. Water cannot even pass. What happens? You turn on the tap, no water is coming out. You might also be wondering, does that actually happen? Yes, it does. It's when you hear things like ischemic stroke. So today I'm teaching you people some of the diagnosis, the meaning. Yes, ischemic stroke, myocardial infarction, heart attack, that one, exactly. What happens in a heart attack? And before you think it's only other organs it can affect, the way the blood vessels that supplies other organs can be narrowed is the same way the blood vessels that supply the heart itself, the pump itself, can be narrowed. Now imagine if a blood vessel that was supplying the heart is completely narrowed at some point. That is why people have heart attack. That is it. When they say, myocardial infarction, that is it. Heart attack, that is how it is. Now imagine if this happens in the brain and the blood vessel to the brain is completely shut off. Then that is how you have ischemic stroke, and then the person loses ability or function to do certain things or function in certain areas of their body. So it's the same way, and it can happen to any other organ. Sometimes why some organs fail too is because there's no blood supply to them. And then another thing that can also happen, imagine if that build up, that dirt in the pipe actually dislodges, like it comes off the attachment to the wall. That's why sometimes when people open their tap, they see strange particles inside their water that they are not expecting to see. Now that can also happen in the body, and then it now moves to different areas. Imagine if it moves from one area to another area and then goes to go and block that area. We see it too in the body. It's called embolism or thrombosis. And then, of course, the pump itself can get tired and overworked. And because of that, you can see things like heart failure. And then, most times, anything that overworks the heart too much tends to affect 2 organs. 1, it affects the lungs, because the lungs are in close proximity to the heart. And unlike the pipe system, where the pipes are fixed, they don't really have enough elastic material. So if water cannot go through and it has to stay there, it will eventually burst almost immediately. The body sometimes can accommodate by expanding, and then sometimes you can have backflow of water into areas that is not supposed to be. And it commonly happens in the lungs. It commonly happens in the legs. So some people have swollen feet. So that's how you see, sometimes when you see some people that they have high blood pressure and their feet is getting swollen, this is how it happens. Or some people that have high blood pressure that they can't breathe very well as they are talking. That is it. It's because there's actually water in their lungs. Think about it. Another organ that gets damaged easily anytime there's anything wrong with that, once the heart is stressed, is the kidney. Because the kidney is like the cousin of the heart when it comes to maintaining blood flow. So once the heart is stressed, it can't do what it's supposed to. The kidney too, it doesn't waste time. It will close shop. So those are the consequences of high blood pressure. And the sad thing is, all these things happen quietly. Usually when the pipes are getting clogged slowly, you won't know. Because what happens is, when you open the tap a bit and you feel like the water is not coming out as much as it needs to, you just open it to capacity, and then the water comes out in full, you use it and you move on. It's the same thing with our organs. The organs need more. The heart puts more pressure than normal. As long as you are being supplied, you won't bother. You get on with your life, you keep doing things, but you are not checking your blood pressure. You don't know what is happening, and the pressure is slowly building up in your body. You are going from the normal range, you are now borderline, now it is high, like that, and you are not checking. You don't know anything, you are clueless. You get on with life. There are some signs here and there, some headaches, there are some tiredness. Then you notice you can't climb stairs. Then you notice when you're trying to walk uphill, your leg is paining you. All these things, they are happening quietly, until one day, miraculously, either something happens that forces you to go to the hospital, or God forbid, the worst, which is what we see. People faint, people pass out, people die, people have excruciating chest pain, and when they get to the hospital, they discover they're having a heart attack. And then the narrative is, oh, but I was okay, I didn't know anything, I was fine, I was getting on with life. And now, well, you were never fine. Changes were happening in your body, but you never knew about it. Now, the great thing is, you are here. Thank you for listening to this very point, because this is probably the most important part of this episode. Can it be prevented? Yes. And will you do something about it? You must. So at this point, let's talk about how we can prevent high blood pressure. Because this particular condition kills the most people in the world. High blood pressure and the consequences of high blood pressure, they are the number one. Go and Google it. Press your phone. You will see. Stroke, heart attack, number one killer of people everywhere. It doesn't matter your race or location. That is what the statistics say. So it is very, very important. If you've not checked your blood pressure, it's a good place to plan or schedule a check. Go and check your blood pressure. Bring out your manometer and check your blood pressure. Now, let's talk about the good news. Prevention. Now, as you know, even for your house, regular maintenance of your plumbing system is the goal. So, you have to make sure that you have plans in place to help prevent blood pressure. Now, remember when we were talking about the causes of high blood pressure, we spoke about the essential ones, or the primary ones, and the secondary ones. Now, there are some that you don't have any control over, like the family history. You can't change the family that you are born into, or the genetics. You can't change that. But you can't change aging also, because you will grow older and things will happen to you. Your body is not the same. You might look young, but your body inside knows you're real. Anyways, we also spoke about lifestyle factors like your diet, exercise, stress. Why? Because we've discovered certain things. So, a diet rich in salt. So if you are eating a lot of salt, it can cause you to have high blood pressure. It can predispose you to having high blood pressure. So one way to prevent high blood pressure is to reduce the amount of salt that you eat. Now, before you think, oh, I don't use so much salt, but you use all the friends and companions of salt in your day-to-day cooking. You eat things that already have a lot of salt in them. You can't fry plantain without putting salt on top of it. You can't fry yam without putting salt on top of it. When you cook your soup and stew, you overload on salt. Okay, you don't do all of that, but you eat a lot of bread. Do you know that there's salt in some of the breads that you eat? And that in itself can contribute to you developing high blood pressure. So it's important, watch your diet, reduce the amount of salt that you eat. Watch processed foods, because most of those processed foods actually have salt in them, so be careful. Then also, you need to move more. Exercise is important. Why? Because it helps to reduce the rate at which you store things like fat. Because when you exercise, you burn energy, and your muscles need energy to function. So whatever storage of fat that is in your body, after the body has used up all the readily available sugar, the body will break down all the fat sources to get sugar from it and then be able to function. Don't worry, there'll be another episode where we'll talk about diet and food and how you store fat and all of that, so you get more details. That's why you need to stick around. But back to our hot topic. Exercise is very important. And when I mean exercise, before you think I'm saying you should go and be lifting weights, which is good, or run a marathon, which is also great, you can start small. Just walk. Even if it's 30 minutes of walking or any activity you like. Some people like skipping, some people like dancing. Just move your body. Burn some good calories every day. It works wonders. It helps to reduce fat clogs. You know, that build-up thing we're talking about, some of it is fat, and your body needs to break down some of those things. I'm sure if I mention the term that most of you know, you'll be like, oh, I know that, yes, cholesterol, but we'll still talk about that on another episode. Now, another thing you can do is to avoid stress. It is so important. You know, I also mentioned that, but that was for secondary causes, that sometimes there are certain hormones that can set your heart on that overdrive to keep pumping and increasing the pressure. And one of those hormones is actually what we release when we are stressed. It's called cortisol. So you have to try as much as possible to reduce stress. If there's anything you can delegate to someone else. If there's a stressful condition that you can't handle, please leave it. Move on. Look for other alternatives. Think of other ways. Reduce the amount of stress you subject yourself to. Physical stress and emotional stress, because emotional stress is always converted to physical stress eventually. So try as much as possible to manage your stress level. If it means meditating, journaling, talking to someone, breathing exercises, anything apart from harmful behavior, please explore. Okay? Then another thing that also you can do to prevent high blood pressure in terms of lifestyle changes. If you smoke, please quit smoking. Every puff damages your arteries. No jokes. It's the only substance that is openly marketed as something that can kill you. So if you smoke, please stop smoking. And when I mean smoke, I mean smoking cigarettes, smoking other drugs, use of shisha, vaping. They are all in the same category. Yes, they're all the same category. So please quit everything. If you need helpful resources, you can reach out to me. I'll drop my email at the end. There are so many resources available to help manage that. So please quit smoking. Sleep well so that your body can actually rest. Poor sleep actually raises blood pressure, so you need at least 6 to 8 hours of sleep at night. Please do get some rest. Also, limit alcohol intake. And the way the liver processes alcohol, it leads to increased fatty deposits in your liver, and eventually it goes from just being in your liver to your pipes, so the blood vessels. And we already know what happens when the blood vessels are being narrowed, so that is how alcohol causes high blood pressure. So reduce your alcohol intake. So it's very important. So if at all you have to drink alcohol, please not more than 1 to 2 drinks a day, not more than that. So that's very important. And then also, in terms of prevention, if you've been diagnosed with any secondary disease or condition that can cause high blood pressure, please always ask your doctor if there are any chances it can, and if it's something that they can include in your management plan, so that you prevent yourself from getting high blood pressure. And if you already have high blood pressure, if you have hypertension, I've already spoken about the consequences. It doesn't need to end that way. So the best thing for you to do is to use your medications properly. High blood pressure medications are not things that you should be skipping, you should be forgetting, things that you get tired of, because they are very, very important. Some of them can literally add years onto whatever diagnosis timeline that you've been given. So it is very, very important for you to stay on top of your medication and continue to monitor your blood pressure. It's not something that, especially if you've been diagnosed as hypertensive, it is not something that you just check your blood pressure when you seemingly have certain symptoms, maybe when you feel like you have headache or you have a chest pain coming on. No, it is something that you should check regardless, so that you keep tabs on it. Also, you can have a journal for your blood pressure where you write down the readings. So if you check this morning, you put the time, you write it down, and you follow through like that. Now, if you've had any of the consequences, so if you've suffered a stroke, if you've had a heart attack before, it's fine. It can get better. You just need to establish control and be aware of all the trigger factors. So things like chest pain, things like blurry vision, things like headaches that are not going, that feel very, very bad. Now keep tabs on all of that and have a good relationship with your doctor. You get why? Have a good relationship with your doctor, so that they also know what is going on, and they can also give you more information on how to keep tabs of your health. See, having a good relationship is not so that you can call them every now and then. It's so that they can put you onto resources, they can give you information that you need concerning your health. So it's very, very important. Now, blood pressure might sound just like another number from your checkup, but behind that number is a story about how your body is coping. Now, if you are listening to this and you've never checked your blood pressure, let this be your sign. Please, we are begging. It is quick, painless, and could literally save your life. Let's not wait until the pumps fail. Let's not wait until the pump fails or the pipes burst. Thanks for tuning in to Doc Explain This. If you found today's episode helpful, please share it with a friend or a loved one, and don't forget to follow the show for more episodes that make medicine make sense. And if you have a question or you want a certain topic explained, please, you can always email me at docexplainthis@gmail.com. So that's DOCEXPLAINTHIS gmail.com. Until next time, take care of your health. It's the best house you ever live in. Bye bye.